Okay. Please remind me, in case if I forget to record, I might not be knowing. Anyway, I've just recorded now. So to be putting it once again, remote root directory is the directory where whenever you want to execute a job from this server X, it will go to this directory and it will be executing all those commands or whatever you have to run based on this directory. Okay, now the next thing is labels. So if you remember the first class when I was talking about Jenkins future, I was telling that Jenkins acts as a cron server replacement, which means you don't have to tie up one particular task to a server, which means you can specify a group of servers and anything that you want to run, you can specify that group so that any one server which is available in the group should be sufficient for the Jenkins to pick up and run. So say that you have two servers like this. Okay, now suppose if you create a group based on this, now what will happen is when you're creating a group based on this, when you're creating a job, you won't be specifying one particular server, but instead you will be specifying the group. Okay, so that what is the difference is whenever Jenkins has to connect, it will go to the group, and in the group it will check how many servers are present, and in those servers which one is available for execution, which means which server is up and running and which server has the resources to run the job which you have specified. Okay, so for that purpose we have to create something called labels, which means you are adding this server to a group. Label is nothing but a group. Okay, so now you have, whenever you type in some string here, it is going to be a group name to which the server X will be added, and you can use the same thing for multiple servers also. So I will say test. Okay, so label, as I said, label is nothing but a group of servers that you identify. Okay, right now this server X is being added to the group called test. Okay, now the next thing. So the point here is how long do you want to use this job? Or sorry, how long do you want to use this server? So it says either you want to utilize this as much as possible, or you choose only if you are attaching a particular label to it, which means now here you have a job, right? Exactly, if you see here, it is not the server is calling, but the job inside the server is calling this, right? So in that case, how do you want to choose the server X specifically? That is, by default, if you choose use this node as much as possible, then whenever you create a job and in that you don't specify where you have to run, then what it will do, it will go and search for the default servers which is available, or the default nodes that is available. Sorry, is there a question, Bhargav? Bhargav, you had some question? Sorry, I just now saw. Uh, can you type it once again? Is that done automatically, which all are available for running? What do you mean by that? I mean, can you be a little specific so that I can tell you? So you're asking that will it be automatically picking? Yes. So when we have created a server like server X, okay, now what will happen is automatically when you create a server X, and like I said, there will be one slave.jar which will be running in the server so that it will be connected to the master. And by default, whichever server is up, Jenkins will automatically take it. So we don't have to tell which server is running, which server is down. That is the advantage where the Jenkins acts as a cron server replacement. So you don't have to specify that this is where you have to run, this is where you have to run. I will just say use this group and run. So when you say that, automatically Jenkins will check, okay, am I able to connect both of the servers, or is there only one server connecting? So it uses its internal mechanisms to choose which one is available and running. Okay, so we will see that also. So when we create two servers, we will keep one server down and see what happens automatically. Okay, and now as I was saying here, the usage is if you don't specify whether you want to run it, then automatically this job, whatever you're running, it will check for all the servers which is available and it will pick any one. So instead of that, you have to specify this so that only when you specify that this job should run in this group, that is what the label, right? Label is this test. So only if you specify this server or the job saying that it has to run on this group called test, then it will pick anyone among here. Or specifically when this is free, it will come and pick this. In case if this is not free, it will pick up this. Okay, so I'll specify this as build only jobs with label restrictions matching this node. Okay, now then the next thing. So how do you want to connect the master Jenkins to this particular slave or server X? Okay, so there are a lot of ways which you can do. Basically, you can try to connect it using SSH, or you can basically use a JNLP like what you said. Okay, so what we will say is I will use launch Java by the launch slave using Java Web Start. Okay, and then the last thing is how long do you want to keep this server up? So keep this as much as possible, or only when some server or some job is trying to connect to this, you have to work. Okay, so based on that, you can choose. So for now, I'm going to keep it as much as possible. I mean, keep it online as much as possible. And further, here if you see there are options for environment variable. All right, so this is something in case if you want something specific to be triggered on this server. If you remember when we set the global configuration, I had set it up some environment variable here. So by default, all this environment variables which we have specified here will be taken into consideration for connecting to any server. In case if you want to change something specific to this server, then you can give this options here wherein you can add some environment specifically saying that whenever you're working on this, you choose this environment variable. In the same case, you can choose some tools also. Tools in the sense all these applications which you want to run, application in the sense some command or whatever that you want to run on the server, specifically if that is different, then you use. If not, what we'll be doing is we will always be using the global configuration only. That is the reason we specify things here. Okay, so now once this much is done, we'll save it. Okay, now if you see, we have a server created, but the red mark indicates that the server is not reachable or it is not connected. So how do you connect to it? So if you click onto this, you see here, it pretty much says that there is a slave.jar through which you can connect, or there is a JNLP file using which you can connect from this server to Jenkins. So remember, now see this. If you see, assume that this server is a remote server. That is what I said. Now, when you're connecting from this server, how are you connecting to this Jenkins? Basically, see, you are specifying the IP address and the port on which Jenkins is running. By default, Jenkins will be running on 8080 port, and localhost means this is the host on which Jenkins is running. For now, if you see, since the server X and the Jenkins master is on both the same server, you are seeing this. In case if the server X was some other remote place, then here it would have been a different IP address, or it would have been some name of the server like this. So server X dot company name at domain.com, something like that it will be. So now when you try to connect in that way from this remote X or from this remote server X, you are trying to connect to this master. So if not, there's one other simple way is that you can use the slave.jar. So now if you see, if I click on this, it will be downloading the slave.jar. Okay, so it is downloading. Now, what you can do is you can download the slave.jar and you can copy this slave.jar from your Jenkins to the server X. So you can do a SSH and copy, or there are various ways that you can copy. By default, this jar would be present in all the servers. So you can get it from the user administrator saying that I need to copy this jar in case if you don't have permission to do. Okay, so now assume that I am in the server X now. Okay, fine. So I'm just checking. slave.jar whether it is present. So if you see, I have downloaded, so I'm going to the downloads folder and you have this file. Okay, so what I'm going to do is from this place, I'm going to run this command simply, wherein you are trying to use this jar and connect to the Jenkins master, wherein this is the IP address and this is the port. And whenever you run this, it will automatically start connecting, and the Jenkins master recognizes that you are trying to run some server. Okay, see this. So I have entered this. Okay, and if you enter, it is saying that it is connected. So what you have to do is you have to take this file called slave.jar, or you take this entry and put into the cron job. Okay, so from the server X you will be having a cron job. Okay, so in that you take an entry and put it, so that you don't have to worry about running it every time. If not, what will happen? Every time you want to connect to this server, you have to run this. That is, you have to go to this server X and then run this command. So instead of that, you can take this and you can put an entry into the cron server. Okay, so that you put an entry saying that it will be running every 1 minute. So automatically every 1 minute, this will be run, and once it is running, then the Jenkins master can always connect to it. So I'll tell you more about how do you create a cron entry, because even in Jenkins you have the same concept of cron entry that I'll explain when we are seeing the jobs. Okay, so now we are up and running. Okay, so now if we go back once again to the nodes, if you see, you have the server X, it is running. Okay, now quickly let us try to create one more node. Okay, so now you see this here. Earlier there was only one option called dump slave, but here now you have one more option called copy existing node. So Jenkins has a feature wherein if you have similar configuration, then you don't have to recreate everything. Simply use this option wherein it can copy all the existing data onto a new node or whatever configuration you're doing. Okay, so now what I'll do is simply I'll say server Y and I will say copy and I'll say server X. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is I'm saying create a node wherein have all the options that we have specified for this node server X into this. Okay, so that it copies over all the information from this to this. Okay, you see here, so whatever options that we are given, it is going to pick up the same thing. Okay, so wherein we have added a group called test for this server also. So now whenever you are referring to a label or a group called test, it will be pointing to server X and server Y. So what we'll do is I don't want to bring this server up, which means I don't want to run the slave.jar. Why? Because let us see how Jenkins behaves. So right now if you see, we have a group called test in which we have two servers. In that only one server is up and running, the other server is down or not reachable. Okay, so going forward when we are working, let's see how Jenkins behaves. Okay, so this is pretty much from the server configuration. So it's simple wherein you just have to inform where is the node or where is the slave and what and all details that you have to use. Any doubts so far?
Adam, I have one doubt.
Yes, please.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. When you are configuring the node, you just giving one launch method, right?
Yeah.
Here, there are three more options.
Which
Can
one?
you please explain those options?
Which one?
In launch, go to node.
Yeah, this one you're saying?
Not this one. Go to configure.
Okay, here you're
Configuration.
saying.
Yeah, launch method.
Okay, so it's just a way. So see, suppose if you want to connect to the server X from Jenkins, you can connect it through SSH. Okay, so when you specify this, then whenever this Jenkins master has to connect to this, it will use SSH. SSH in the sense, I told you this earlier, right? This is the command that it will run. So whatever command that you specify to run, it will be connecting like this SSH server, and whatever options that you use in the job to run, it will run. So if not, if you use this, this is what we use default, because it's little simple wherein I just download the slave.jar and I can start running. Suppose if the server X is itself a Windows server, like what we are trying, then what you can do is you can actually create a service, a Windows service, so that, like I said, if you want this to be running every time, like what is I said? I said you have to specifically put into the cron job on that server X so that every 1 minute it will be automatically running. In case if this server X is Windows, then there is no concept of cron. So how will you schedule something to run it automatically in Windows? So then you have something called as Windows service. Okay. So when you click that option, what will happen is basically it will add an entry to here. So whenever you come, that means whenever you bring the Jenkins up, it will be running this automatically as a service so that you don't have to worry about keep on running it manually. So that is the difference. So how you want to connect is always important. So SSH is not a preferable way because if you try to connect, there will be so many other jobs running. Okay, and we have security issues with SSH, and that is the reason we always go with Java webs.r. In case if your server X is a Windows, then you choose this. When you click this and you go back to the option, okay, so here it will give you an option. So when you click that, automatically it will add it, or it will pop up when you're clicking that. So if you click that, it will be added as a service here. So just like when you see you're running something, it will add that also server X as a service, and it will be adding it whenever you connect to the Windows server, or whenever you log in, it will automatically be running.
Yeah. Most of the time we are working on Linux environments, right?
Yeah, exactly. That is what I was
Yeah.
trying to. So since
Yeah.
you'll be running most of the time, so this is the only option that you'll be using. So wherein you can use SSH, but SSH is not preferable, like I said, because of security issues, and it'll be a little slow. Wherein if you say you're trying to connect it through Java method, which means it's quite faster and it's not vulnerable to some breakages and all. That is what I was trying to show you
Okay.
this.
When we are connecting through, when we are working in Linux environments, in Linux environment also we are using the same command jar hyphen slave dot
Yeah, it is the
Jenkins.
same command. That's what I said. See, if you see, I'm just connecting. That's it. I'm not doing anything specific to Windows here. If you see, I'm calling Java, wherein I am calling this jar called slave.jar, and to that jar, I am passing an option wherein this option specifies what is the Jenkins master. So this slave will try to read this path and it will try to connect to the Jenkins master. Okay, so pretty much this is the same thing which will be running on Unix. There is no change in the command prompt.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Is that clear?
Uh, yeah.
Okay, fine. So now if you see here, we have created two nodes. And now once we have done with this configuration, now we have done with the node configuration, wherein for now we just have created two. So like this, based on your need, you will be creating many more servers based on what job you have to run, where you have to run. So the next important thing what you have to do is jobs. So we are going to see more about this, wherein what is that you can do, what are the different things that you can do is what we'll be seeing more from the jobs. Okay, so as I pointed there, job is nothing but a group of tasks which you have to run on a particular server using this Jenkins master. Okay, so now if you see here, everything is empty, but once you start creating a job, all the jobs will be present here. Okay, it is the other way. Job runs on a server. If you remember, I had specified this particular path. What does this mean? It means that this server Y can run only one job. That is what it means. So here, if you give two, then this server Y can run two jobs. Yeah, you can specify. So it depends on the hardware configuration of this server Y. So based on what is the capacity and how much it can take, you can specify. If not, it's always better to give one or two based on the configuration, or it is better just to give one itself. So if you have a multi-core server and it has multi-processors, then you can do much. So you have to be pretty much clear in that. It's not like if I say 10, I can run 10, but it depends on the hardware of this. Okay, fine. So now we'll be going into, yeah, it be possible that one server can connect to many groups, or sorry, can you come again with the question? See, you are not directly calling a server. Going forward, whatever jobs that we create, that is the job which will be connecting to the server. Okay, so it is not that the server will be connecting to the group. You have a group in which you have specified some servers. Okay, now going forward, how will a Jenkins use it? Unless and until you have to have a job, right? So only when you create a job, and in that job, if you specify this is the server I have to use, or this is the group I have to use, specifically it will be using. So we'll be going through all those things in some time. Okay, so you cannot you can do if your question is more on one server can act on multiple groups, yeah, you can specify the comma separated and you can specify it. Is that your question that you're asking? You can specify comma separated and you can create one more. Okay, so that means this server is part of both the groups, so that you can specify it as many as you want. But since again it will be a little complex, we'll be using simply one only. But based on your need, suppose if you have this server as a common one wherein you want to connect multiple jobs, then you can use it multiple labels here. Is that clear? Okay, so now as I said, now going on, we will be seeing more on the jobs, because this is what it is about, configuring the server and configuring the slave. Now specifically, we need to create job, and that is what Jenkins is going to act based on what we are going to instruct. Okay, so if you come here, this is the first thing called new item. So this is going to create a job. Okay, fine. So now once again, if you see, whenever you're creating a new job, there are so many options which is available. Okay, so pretty much here these two are more when you have some complex job that you have to run, but other than that you will be using this freestyle wherein you define what you have to run. Okay, just like when we did node, it was a demo, right? We saw demo slave. In the same way here, freestyle means it is not going to give any options for you, or it doesn't give any pre-built options. You have to specify completely on what is our it is. So that is what we are going to do now, just to have a good understanding. After that, we will see specifically from the Maven project how you have to call this Maven specifically when you are connecting to Jenkins. Okay, so now I'll say first job one. Okay, and I'll say freestyle. Okay, now once you have it here, now once again in the job, if you see, there are particular options wherein if you see the first one, or until this block, whatever you specify, it is going to say that how Jenkins or how this job has to be triggered using Jenkins. Okay, wherein this option specifically, if you see here, specifies what details that you have to connect to the SCM, which means if you have any source code management tool like Git, Subversion, Perforce, then you have to specify all the details in this column for this job. And once that is done, then this will say when it has to be triggered. Okay, so you have specified specifically how it has to be triggered, and then you are saying specifically if there is any SCM related activity you specify, and build triggers specifies when exactly you need to run. Is it that I need to run it every 5 minutes, or is it that every 1 minute or half an hour, whatever that you specify similar to cron job, all those things will be specified here. And finally, the build step is going to tell what exactly you are going to run using this job. Okay, so are you going to do a build? Are you going to run a simple script? Are you going to run some other application through it? So like that, this build option is going to specify what you have to run using this Jenkins job. Okay, and finally, the post build action is that wherein once you have completed execution of this job, is there any post step which you have to do? Post step in the sense, after completing my job, suppose if I have to do some post step, then you have to specify it here. Okay, so we'll have options for all these things. So we'll go through one by one and we'll see how to connect. Wherein what we'll do is, first we will create jobs. So based on the job, whatever we have to do, we will set it up. Okay, so the first thing we will go through this. Fine. Now description, as it says that you're just going to say what is it required for. Okay, I'm going to say this is a test job. Okay, now the first option here says discard old builds. Now again, going back to the features of Jenkins, 1 minute, just a minute. Sorry. So the okay, discard old builds. Now when I was specifying the futures, I said that Jenkins has a ability to track all the history. Okay, so in that case, whatever that you try to run this job, Jenkins will be managing it. Okay, it will be storing it. So if you just leave it like that, all your Jenkins server is going to get accumulated with the logs of this job. So like this, you'll be having so many jobs. So it is pretty much required that we have to delete all the older run of the job. So this option is being used for that, wherein if you see, you can specify this log rotation, which means do you want to delete the logs of this job that is based on the number of days or based on the number of builds that you're going to do. Okay, now what does this mean is, try to understand. By default, Jenkins is used for running continuous integration, right? So continuous integration means it is a build which you are doing. So all those details, whatever you will be referring, will be referred as build. But don't get confused. Build means you should be doing only build. You can pretty much do anything because Jenkins is going to just act as a framework. So if you call build, it is going to do a build. If you call some script, it is going to run a script. If you call some application, it is going to do. So it doesn't care what is that you're doing. But since the usage of Jenkins is mainly for continuous integration build, now everything that it refers is to build, but don't get confused. So in that case, every time you run this job, it will be referring it as one build, second build, third build. Okay, so in that case, how frequently you want to keep this job. So once you start running this job, all those details will be present here. So if you want to delete all those logs at a interval, do you want to delete it based on a day? So if I say 1 day, then at the end of 1 day, all the old bills will be deleted. If not, if I say 3, so that means at any point of time, it will keep only 3 builds here. So as soon as you create the 4th build, it will delete the first build. So that means this job is used to store only 3 builds as a log for information. Okay, fine. Now don't worry about anything else. Now I'm not going to do all these things, but right now what is that we are trying to do is we are trying to create a simple job to print some message. Okay, so in that case, I don't have anything to specify. All right, so now let's go to this build step. Okay, and then since it is a Windows, I will use execute Windows batch command and we can tell something here. So I'll say echo hello, this is my first job. Okay, so now I'm applying it and I'm saving it. Okay, so now once it is done, the job is created. Okay, so now when you have created the job, if you see, we didn't tell when it has to run. So what and all we have specified? We have specified only one thing, that is what it has to execute, but we didn't tell when it has to execute, how it has to execute. All those things are not being told. So in that ways, whenever in Jenkins you don't specify anything on when it has to be run, okay, then there is an option wherein you can manually trigger this job. So keep it in mind. Triggering a job can be in two ways. That is, either you can specify a cron entry so that whenever you specify a time based on which this job will be automatically getting triggered using this job, using this server, wherein you don't specify where it has to run, when it has to run. So in that case, there is an option called build now. Now this is doing it on need basis. So whenever I want, if I click this, this job will be getting executed. Okay, so if not, what I can do is I can always schedule this job so that the Jenkins automatically can take care of running it. So for now, to understand, I am trying to trigger it manually on need basis. Okay, so now when I click this build now, it has run. Okay, so now here if you go, there is an option called console output. Okay, so that is nothing but you are running something on the screen, right? So that is the output that it has given. And if you see, what is the output that it has given? It is running the command what we have set to run. Okay, now the question to you guys is, did we tell where we have to run this? No, right? We didn't tell anything about where this job has to be run. So in that case, what has it taken? So if you see this option, it has taken the master itself by default and it is running on that itself. Okay, so that is what the difference. Suppose if you don't say anything on where you have to run, then by default it will be running on the master. Okay, now if I want to specify, so what I'll do is, in order to once again change some values for the job, what you have to do is, there is a configure option that you will use it once again to get it back. Okay, so now here in this option here, if you see the last one, restrict where this can be run. So if you click this here, it is asking us what is the label that you have to use. So now if I say test, okay, see, automatically it is saying that this label or group called test has two servers into it. So if you click this, it will be pointing to that two servers. Okay, now I'll apply, save. Okay, and now if I say build now, because what we have said now, we have just said which server group to use, but we still didn't say when you have to run it. So I am trying to do a build on need basis by clicking this. Okay, so it has created a two means second build. Okay, so now if you go to the console output, you see here what it has done. So which server that it has used? It has used server X. Why? Because in this group called test or label called test, we had two servers wherein Y is not reachable. So it is using only the server which is reachable in this group. So it has picked up only the server called server X. Okay. Now the second thing, is it clear now until this much? So whenever you are using a particular server, do you remember I told you something about this remote root directory? So what was the remote root directory that we specified? If you see, this was the remote root directory that I have specified, isn't it? So now look closely. So what Jenkins does is, whenever you connect to a server and run on this, then it will be going to the remote root directory, and inside that it will be running all the commands that you have given. Okay, so now let's try to check that also. So now I'll go to configure, and here what I'll do is I'll simply say, so what this does is, it is putting this output called hello this whatever, and I'm redirecting it to a file, which means basically once it prints, it is going to create a file called test.txt. It is just for some demo that I'm showing. Okay, so whatever that you are running, the output will be stored in this test.txt. So now see this. Now once we run, and now if we say build now, okay, so now if I click onto this, so see what it has done. So now, where is the remote root directory for the server? This is the remote root directory, wherein what Jenkins does is whenever you specify a remote root directory, it will create a folder called workspace, and inside the folder called workspace, it will create a directory in the name of the job which you are trying to run, so that we can differentiate what is this folder used for and what and all it has to run. Okay, so this was the remote root directory that we have specified, isn't it? Now it is automatically creating this too, because this is the structure that it is trying to maintain. So anytime that you run one job using this server, it will go to this path. Inside that, it will create a folder called workspace, and inside that it will create a folder by the name of the job what you're running, and there it will be running all the commands what you're running. It is not directly on the remote root directory. Okay, because you might be running multiple jobs using this server. So in that case, to differentiate, what we will do is Jenkins will automatically create this folder. Different jobs on different folders. Once again, I'll just come back now. So now let us go to this folder. Okay, so now if you go to this folder, so this is the workspace what we had, and inside this, if you see, we have job one, and inside job one, this is the text.txt, right? This is what we have created here, and if you see this, it will have the content what you have printed. So logically this means what you are trying to run, it will be basically running in this directory, wherein it will create a folder called workspace and a name of the job, and inside that it will be running exactly all those commands that you're specifying. Okay, all right, the question is, can we configure Jenkins to run different jobs on different folders? So what do you mean by different folder? You mean to say like this? No, that is not possible, because this directory, what you see, is a remote directory for this. Okay, logically, if you see, it is running on different folders, right? Let's try to create one more job later, and if you see, like suppose if I create job 2 and I'm running it using server X, it will be running in a separate directory. Okay, but this path will not be changing, because this is the path where Jenkins is going to connect to the server and run with reference to this directory. So you cannot change this, because this is one time value that you give, wherein Jenkins will automatically change this value when you run a different job. Like if I create one more job called job 2, it will be creating a new folder called job 2, and it will be running everything inside it. Is that clear? Any doubts? Okay. Sorry, can you please come again? I didn't get the question, Bhargav. What do you mean by running inside it? Running inside means, see, now, where is this file created? Where did we create this file? We created in a folder inside this, right? See this, it ran here. So when I say it running inside this folder, every time when you create a job and you run it against a server, it will be creating this directory, right? And this is the directory where we created this file. That is what I wanted to show. Practically it is running inside it. What specific Java job you have? I mean, if you, anything that you can run, so it's not a restriction that this is what you have to run. You can run pretty much anything. So see, that is what So here, if you see, you have options wherein you can run a normal command prompt. It is something like similar to what we are running it on command prompt. If it is in Windows, you will be running this. If it is on Unix, you will be running this. So after that, whatever Java command that you want to run, you can just run it inside it. So here, whatever you run, pretty much it will be running on the command prompt on that server on which you're connecting and working. So it doesn't matter, or Jenkins doesn't care whether that is a Java job or some simple execution of some commands like this. So for that, if you see, you have only 4 options. You forget about these two. It is specifically for doing a build, but other than that, it just gives you 2 options. So if it is Unix, you run it as a shell. So just like here, if you open this, it will give you a command prompt wherein you can run anything that you want to run. So other than that, it doesn't care about all those things. Yeah, I'll come to it later. So here, console output is what you're trying to store, right? See this. What is this? This is the build job that you have run, right? So automatically it stores everything what you're running. Okay, so this is how, see, this is nothing but you're running it on console output, right? If I run this like this, it is equivalent to running it like this, right? If I just run it like this, that's it. It is the same thing wherein whatever output that you're giving, that it is what it is giving. So all those things, what you see here, the console output is the output of the job what you're running. Wherein we will see it little later on how do you configure the email. That will come to little later. Okay, so suppose you can choose an option when you want to send an email when it is failure or passing, that we can do. If not, this is, if you go to this job, it will be showing all the details, okay, of how many jobs you have run. But now see this, what happens. I have created one more build. Okay, now if I create one more build, I'm just clicking on 2 builds. But if you see here, it is storing only 3. That is because we had specified to discard the build. Okay, if not, what will happen? It will be keeping on all these things until the end, until how much ever time you want, it will be keeping. So instead of that, we were using some log rotation saying that keep only the 3 logs, right? See this, only 3 builds maximum. So that is why it is keeping only 3. Now once you do it once again, or when you run it once again, it will be deleting one of the old entry and it will be adding it as 6. Is that clear? Hello. Okay, I'll pretty much stop it here. Okay, so